Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for coming to the final presentation for Stewart Langley's Pathy Foundation Fellowship. My name is Nicola Brogan, and today I will be your moderator. I'm a recent graduate from the University of Ottawa, and I've spent the last year working in Hamilton, Ontario as a Pathy Foundation Fellow. Over the past 9 months, I've gotten to know Stewart through our triad, which is a group of 3 fellows who support each other closely over our fellowship experiences. For his fellowship, Stewart worked in Kingston, Ontario on collaborative solutions to chronic homelessness. Stewart graduated from Queen's University in 2019 from a Bachelor of Science degree with a major concentration in life sciences and a minor concentration in Spanish and Latin American studies. Stewart grew up in Halifax, Nova Scotia as the oldest of 5 siblings. As difficult as it was to leave the beautiful East Coast, Stewart happily relocated to Kingston in 2015 to begin his studies. Early in his undergraduate degree, Stewart discovered his passion for working with often marginalized populations in Kingston, including individuals who are homeless, low-income families, and newcomer and refugee youth. He has worked and volunteered with many organizations in Kingston, including the Kingston Street Mission, Lily's Place Transition Home, Immigration Services Kingston, Ryandale Transitional Housing, and the AMS Food Bank. As Stewart became more connected to Kingston, he found that many important community services would frequently work in a silo without any easy way to collaborate or communicate with other agencies they often overlapped with. For this reason, and because of his desire to return to Kingston after graduation, Stewart applied for the fellowship to work on fostering collaboration and building upon existing work with community groups supporting the homeless and low-income population. For Stewart, the biggest highlight from his fellowship was the creation of a drop-in center for homeless adults. Open Monday to Friday, the service, called the St. Mary's Drop-In Center, is a place for individuals to access immediate materials such as clothing, food, toiletries, and furniture, and to receive social support from volunteer staff. As well, after the COVID-19 pandemic, guests will be able to participate in programming centered around education, employment, the arts, and health promotion in partnership with other community services. Stewart is really one with the community. During our time on campus last year, we hosted community dinners each Wednesday. When it came time for the lads to host, Stewart's lighthearted nature shone. He has a knack for bringing people together using his sense of humor, his care for well-being, and the genuine interest he has in each of our lives. And I'm sure that will shine through today in his presentation. After Stewart's presentation, there will be a Q&A period. You can comment questions on the Facebook live stream, and I, along with Hanan, will collect all the questions for Stewart to respond following his presentation. And now, our wonderful Stewart.
Thank you, Nicola, for that introduction. As Nicola said, my name is Stewart Langley, and over the past 9 months, I have been working in Kingston, Ontario on my initiative, which is to work towards collaborative solutions to chronic homelessness using a community-driven approach. One of the large components of my fellowship has been the creation of a drop-in center for people to come in and receive support. A few weeks ago, I was there speaking with a woman who I've come to know quite well, and she asked me what did I plan to do after the fellowship. I said I wasn't really sure. I was considering some opportunities in Toronto at the time, and she told me, she said, "No, Stewart, that would not be a good idea. You would not survive a day in Toronto." And I was a bit confused. I said, "Well, why is that?" And she told me, you know, sometimes you're a bit too nice. You listen too much and you talk way too much. And I really think that you're a small town boy. I was like, okay. I didn't know if that was a dig or a compliment, but I'll take it for whatever it was. But I really resonated with what she said in a bit. I think over the year, I've really come to know how much I appreciate building relationships and social connection. My motivation for the fellowship is really because I enjoy getting to know people where they're at, particularly people who are homeless or living marginally. A big part of the fellowship before we enter our communities is coming to isolate and develop our why, the basis of our initiative, and our inner motivation, what gets us up in the morning. I think for me, it's just that. From the connections and relationships I've built with individuals who are homeless, I want to see a community where nobody is left behind or forgotten, and nobody is falling through the cracks. And this is something that's been crucial for my initiative throughout the process. My experience in Kingston began as a student. Um, I came to Kingston in 2015 to study at Queen's University, and as you can see from this graphic, Kingston is a very service-rich city. I became very involved early on in my undergraduate degree with a lot of community services, and I just loved getting to understand the missions and the programs that services were offering for diverse communities. Um, I realized throughout my work that a frustration that I had and some of the groups I was working with had was that it was difficult to connect with and to communicate with, to collaborate with other community social services. And and I think for very we're so busy. There's so many different partners. The landscape is always shifting, whether programs are starting or closing. And I saw the fellowship as an opportunity to work towards that goal. I applied with Rindale Transitional Housing, which is a group that I started working with in my undergraduate degree. And coming into the fellowship, I had a particular intention to work towards bridging these gaps between community services for people supporting people who are homeless. And over the summer before the initiative, I formed multiple goals and project outcomes that I intended to do, but we're still open for flexibility. So I wanted to create a network for service providers or create resources for frontline staff to help individuals navigate the system, even helping with community mapping, given that there's always programs that are changing. And when I began, I faced a lot of challenges. I struggled with working with so many groups in different opinions and ideas and mission statements. There's constantly changing initiatives already being undergone in the community. And I was still trying to make connections while building upon the connections I had. And all this time trying to progress through some goals I set for myself. The first few months were pretty eclectic. I was mainly making connections and having initial meetings, getting a lay of the land, and identifying concrete actions I wanted to take. One of the key, probably the most important finding that I started to see, which it really again it resonated with me, was how important social connection was to every community group, the people that they're working with, the people within the organization, in terms of preventing burnout, having successful programs, and interviewing people who are homeless. Social connection is one of the key parts of their life where people get a lot of energy, enthusiasm, and the research I was doing reflected that. One of the key components of success in transitioning from homeless to sustainable living or for addiction recovery is the social supports that people have. And so I think that was a key finding for me and something I related a lot with. And so fast forward to the start of the new year in about January, I was sitting on all this information I had, the difficulties I was facing, the connections that I had made, and I came back to my original why. And before the fellowship began, I had always wanted to see a hub for homeless adults. I wanted to see like a one-stop shop where people could come in, receive support, to be known by name, to receive referrals and help navigate the complex system of social services in my community. And when I came back to the community connections I'd made and the support I'd formed, I talked to them about this idea, and I received a lot of support. And this idea, this service was actually possible. And eventually, I was able to help facilitate the creation of the St. Mary's Drop-In Center. So I began helping St. Mary's Cathedral Parish in early in my fellowship. They were doing research on creating a shelter for people in the community, just from the need that they had known from some of the outreach programs they were running. And I think from that and what I had known, meeting people in the community through my various volunteer programs, I saw that a drop-in center, like a hub for people to come in, would be useful. And so I did a lot of community consultations and talked to people about what that would look like, how that would be helpful, how that wouldn't create too much overlap, but at the same time would be supporting both individuals and the groups that are supporting people already. And using this the asset-based community-driven approach that we use with the Cody Institute, I was able to uncover some really important assets. So, for example, the Cathedral Parish, which is located in the downtown core, had a large parish where there was a large my headphones might have not working there. If sorry about that. Hopefully that works. Is that okay? Sorry. So going back to the slides here. So after doing this research, discovering the parish hall, there was an accessible entrance. There were facilities nearby. There was a public health unit approved kitchen. It seemed like a great place to start something like a drop-in center. And so we collected donations. We gathered together, and we opened in February. I just want to make sure this is still working. Sorry if this. It's hard to tell if it's not working, but I keep getting notifications on my Zoom. Hopefully everyone's hearing me well. It's very strange doing a virtual talk when you can't hear anyone. So we opened in February, and immediately we saw great impact. So notification. Okay, it's working well. Good. Sorry. We began, and we opened to we had to open early because we started forming a lineup, and we immediately started building great social connections, forming relationships with people, being able to spend a lot of time talking, getting to know people where they're at. We initially were serving food, and we had clothing donations coming in, furniture donations coming in, and so the feedback we were getting from people that were coming to our service was great. They said that it felt like home. It felt like they had a place to come where people knew them. We got great support from other community organizations. We did a consultation, and we spoke. We went to every service in Kingston and dropped off our information. We had a lot of positive talks with people who thought this is a really much needed service, and we had a couple interviews on local TV, and it was going really well. We were getting great response. We had about over 20 people coming a day. Since we opened in February, we've had almost 1,500. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, actually, we had an inspection from public health, and they actually recommended us to stay open. And this is only a couple of weeks after we had begun, so it was a bit of a just really running around to get things started. And so we've been running an essential service, obviously with public health protocols. So we can only have 5 people in at a time. We can only give takeaway food, but we're really one of the only services where people can come in and even just have a few minutes to check in on people's well-being, and with physical distancing, of course. So in the future, we have a lot of ideas and goals. This summer, we've started a community garden. So we have a great amount of volunteers, and over 20 volunteers who are going to help regularly with this very large 25 by 100 foot garden to help with us for our supplies. We're going to be having a fresh food stand, and then if any excess, we can give to other community groups too. We noticed that during the COVID-19 pandemic, in the downtown core, there really wasn't anywhere for people to get a shower. So we started installing a shower, and even in the greater Kingston area, there's very limited ability to access a shower. And so providing a clean shower will really help with dignity that people deserve. And then we've also, one thing that's great is that with the extra space, we have started a warehouse with clothing, furniture, household items. And we've been working with a lot of community groups to help set up apartments. So for example, one man we helped a few weeks ago, he was coming from one of the local prisons, and we helped him set up an apartment with some furniture. Another woman who is leaving Kingston Interval House, which is for women seeking refuge from domestic violence. And so we were able to help her set up an apartment. And that was in partnership with community groups that are connected with those individuals already. We also have been networking with partners, and one of our main goals after the COVID-19 pandemic will be to have a robust volunteer training. so having training from the Addiction Mental Health Services in Kingston, the Street Health Center, to help some with to equip volunteers to deal with any of the issues that we might have. And then also running programming workshops in coordination with groups. This year has been a great year for me to learn about myself and to grow as a leader. That's one of the large focuses of the Pathy Foundation Fellowship, and I didn't necessarily understand that until I now reflect back and realize how much I've grown in a year. Some of the things I've been working on. So I really, at the start of the fellowship, I was really worried about stepping on people's toes and not, I didn't want to upset anyone. I didn't want people to disagree with me. And so I had a bit of a paralysis sometimes. I was inventing things that people were saying to me in my mind without people actually giving me negative feedback. One conversation I had with the city's housing program administrator, when I was doing a consultation about the drop-in center, she said, it's not always a bad thing to step on people's toes if it's for a good reason. And in a city that's so complicated and so complex, people will disagree with you, and that I need to be persistent and courageous in that. I've also struggled with just having a fear of failure in the past. I've almost avoided situations and programs like this where it's so self-directed, where you really have to be at your best, and if something doesn't work out, it's kind of on you. That I avoided that, and so overcoming that has been really good. And one thing I've really appreciated about the fellowship is its flexibility, being able to explore my leadership abilities, running meetings that I never thought I'd be able to, getting to meet so many great people and devote all of my time to this initiative that I'm spearheading. And this year I've been learning so much about myself and my community. I learned the value of building relationships, both for myself and for others. I've had the great opportunity to just be able to take time and spend every day just getting to know people, getting to know their story, their strengths, their challenges that they have. I learned that in community work, I'm the greatest tool in my work, in accepting that with humility, but knowing that when I face challenges and I have to persevere and have courage, that being at my best is essential. And I learned really to stay true to my values. Maybe I am a small town boy. Sometimes it's good for me just to slow down and just talk to people. And sometimes if I'm just moving too fast paced, just trying to think about, what I should be doing rather than what do I think I should be doing, or what do people say I should be doing. And I really need to trust my gut instinct. This initiative that I was really working on, I had this idea to, create this resource hub for adults, and I really strayed away from that because I just figured it'd be too difficult. And when I leaned into that idea, leaned into my gut instinct, great things were able to happen. So in conclusion, this year was incredible. One of the most consistent things about this year has been challenges, and I've learned to view challenges positively. Like sometimes myself, I'm the biggest challenge to anything I do. So challenging myself and pushing myself has been a common theme. And I think there's so much more reward. I guess there's so rewarding when there's challenges and you have to persevere and then coming up the other side. Thank you. I believe we're taking questions now.
Thank you, Stewart. That was a great presentation. If anybody has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat on Zoom or the Facebook stream. Or if you're in Zoom, you can raise your hand and we can let you ask it yourself. Okay, JP, I see that you have a question. If you'd like to go ahead.
Sorry, I know I feel kind of selfish asking questions on these because I get to spend so much time with these great individuals. But I'm going to ask something about the city of Kingston specifically. And could you speak a bit about the dynamics specific to Kingston that play into chronic homelessness?
That's a really good question. I think one of the reasons why I really focused on this challenge was Kingston has some when we first applied to the fellowship, Kingston had the lowest housing vacancy rate in all of Ontario. Kingston, I think the demographics in Kingston and the development that's happened historically mean that affordable housing is very difficult. As well, in the past, there's been a lot of turnover and changes within like health services and social services, and so sometimes I think people have gotten left behind. And at the same time, there are some really incredible community-based and municipally-based initiatives that are doing a lot of great work. And so I think for me, I was just really excited to get involved with that and to learn more about it. And yeah, that answers your question.
Great. I'll now call on Pauline to ask a question.
Hi, Stewart. It's Pauline.
Hi, Pauline.
It's great to see you finally.
Yeah.
Stewart, I just wanted to say that I just so much appreciate your presentation. And I had the privilege of talking with you several times throughout your process. And I just want to really appreciate, first of all, what you were able to accomplish. I mean, to actually get a drop-in center established in this time frame is huge. It's a really incredible and significant accomplishment. So kudos to you for doing that. And I also want to really appreciate the authenticity with which you're sharing the experience that you had, especially how you talk about your own personal strengths and how you've grown and learned throughout the process. So well done. I do want to ask, at one point during your fellowship, we talked about how you would find your niche and what it was that you would bring to the community in terms of where could you add positive impact for people living on low income and people experiencing precarious housing or homelessness. So I was just wondering if you could say a little bit more about how did you actually engage with the community partners and figure out that a drop-in center was the way to go?
That's a really good question, Pauline. Thank you so much for the kind words. I think finding my niche took a long time, and I'm kind of surprised as to how much work we were able to accomplish in such a short time, as you mentioned. I think I can reflect back on one conversation I had with somebody working in the municipal government, and they said this was at a time when I was really working at, okay, well, maybe is there a way for me to help connect every community service in Kingston, whether they're funded by the Midway or funded by the city government or community-based and grassroots. And a lot of my experience have been with those kind of community-based, community-driven grassroots initiatives. And they said exactly that, my niche in a sense was working with those community-based groups and being able to help with coordinating community-based groups, which a lot of times don't have the resources or the networks to be able to communicate or collaborate with other groups. And while I think it's a long-term goal, and something that I realize is a long-term goal, I think that this is a good step in the right direction. And I think that when we had this idea for creating a resource center, there was some I think data in a sense that indicated it would be a good idea. There's a similar service for youth that has been really successful called the One Roof Youth Hub in Kingston. And a lot of times the service for adults is a bit more disconnected than the services for youth in the community. So I think that that we focused really on the adult population. And I think some of the and then the community consultations we did, spoke with a lot of different people about if this would be a good idea, if this would be something that's good, and then just from our own experiences, what we noticed people have been asking for, so I think that's kind of how we did. We did there's a lot of groundwork before actually starting something. Given I started here in September, and then it didn't open till February. So all those months are really getting the lay of the land and the background information. That answers your question.
Absolutely. Well done. Thank you.
Great. Now we'll call on Victoria to ask her question via Zoom.
Hi, Stuart. Great presentation. Thank you so much. I really respect your vision and this contribution that you've had towards creating a one-stop shop style drop-in center. And I know that I have a few friends that are actually thinking about creating something like this as well. I know that this is a social issue that has received more attention over the past few years. And I'm just wondering, from your experience this year, is there one or a few key lessons and learnings that come to the surface if you were to give another community group advice if they wanted to bring a similar initiative to life?
That's a really good question, Toria. I think some of the most important things that I've learned is having a strong community of support. So depending on the goal of drop-in center or resource hub that you're creating, having good connections with the people that you want to work with, having good connections with the community that you'll be supporting and working with, and then having a strong connection for people that are going to be supporting the initiative itself. We've had, I don't even know, maybe up to close to 50 volunteers throughout the past few months, and getting donations and everything. It's very difficult if you don't have significant support from people. So I think that probably like those three areas: the support from the people that you're working with first, the support for the people that you're going to be collaborating with, and then getting the support from people who are going to help produce an initiative. Because when you see a community come together, it's you can't take ownership of it or anything, because it really has to be a community driven project.
Thanks, Stuart. That's really powerful, those multiple levels of support from the community itself, but then from also different actors. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Now we have a question from Maggie via the Facebook live stream. So Maggie had said, you had mentioned that you reached out to the other service providers in Kingston when you were starting the drop-in center. Is there a lot of collaboration between similarly focused services in Kingston?
Yeah, I think I mentioned, for example, the One Roof Youth Hub, which is really a story of collective impact, and the United Way in Kingston has been spearheading that, and I think those initiatives that are inherently collaborative obviously have a lot of people supporting it. I think I always knew that what I wanted to do was going to have to be collaborative in nature, and I think that I was fortunate because through my undergraduate degree, I gained so many experiences with a lot of different groups. So I think I almost thought of myself as maybe a way to bridge people, and yeah. So I think having long-term relationships too is important. Being able to form trust and getting to know people for a long time, and remembering people's names, remembering what people are going through, and then I think when people start to trust you and start to trust what your initiative is, then they'll be more open to it. But yeah, that answers your question.
Great. Our next question is from Misco, and he's asking you, what does the volunteer base look like in your work? If you were the only youth, how did that play out in your relationships?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's not many youth who have been volunteering. Maybe because with the COVID-19 pandemic, Kingston there's a lot of universities here, but everyone's gone home. One thing that's great is that through like the Parish community and some of the initiatives that were being run already, there's a pretty strong volunteer network. People that are former social workers or former different jobs. A lot of retired individuals, and yeah, I think the volunteer base is a lot of people that are more mature than I am, and I think I've always recognized that I'm nothing in a sense. Like I don't know much, and I've always loved just hearing people's stories, hearing what they contribute, and I don't know. I never think that I can take ownership of an initiative, because it really isn't. It's not like about me. It's not about me telling people what to do or not, but I think it's been very, very positive for the most part. Sometimes people's personalities can be a bit abrasive, but for the most part, everyone's united in a common goal, and I think that really brings a lot of positivity.
Great. Our next question is from Jose, I believe. What is the most memorable conversation you've had because of your initiative?
I think, I think like for each level of growth I've had, for each level of work I've done, there's been really standout conversations. I think one of the most impactful for me personally recently, there's a man who's been coming to the drop-in center really since the COVID-19 pandemic. He recently had come to Kingston. He was working as a chef, and he didn't really have any family. He was living in one of the lowest quality rental units in Kingston, and you could just tell talking to him that he was pretty sad, and we were able to talk a lot, and I really enjoyed talking to him, seeing him every day, and now he's helping with the garden, the community garden we're doing, and so being able to see and work with someone, and now seeing them take agency and I think be empowered to I think it's been really impactful for me.
Okay. Our next question is from Gio, and he asked, what does it mean to you to reflect back on your learning journey, and how have you developed as a leader and a person throughout your initiative?
I think one of the biggest parts of our initiative has been this one-on-one coaching with Victoria Bauman, who asked me a question earlier, and she's a really, really great woman, really kind, and kind of working with her, one of the most powerful things for me has been understanding and addressing these reoccurring narratives that I have, telling me I'm going to fail at something, or I'm going to people aren't going to like my idea, people aren't going to like me. And I think a lot of times that almost debilitated me from pushing myself or putting myself out there. So I think being more confident in that, and knowing that those things aren't true, while sometimes I might feel that they're still true now, being able to try to reject that. I think also I've learned to be a lot more patient this year, and recognizing that I think when you're in university and everything is kind of at your fingertips with the student club, and you can start something so quickly or end something so quickly, and bring change in the student community very quickly, that when I came to the community sector and started to talk to people and realized, yes, these people have been working here for 15, 20 years, and who am I to say, oh, this is what we should do, and sometimes those ideas are very valuable, but understanding that there's a process, and that while there's maybe a great initiative that we can do, that it takes a lot of different working parts and people working together to eventually see a strong community. So I think that's something I'll take for the rest of my life, that lesson.
Okay, now we have a couple of questions again from the Zoom chat. So Anthony, would you like to ask your question?
Sure. Hi there, Stewart. Anthony Scoggins here. Cody. I want to follow up. You mentioned in passing the phrase collective impact, and I know we talked about that a fair bit when you were in Antigonish way back when. And so and it really focuses on this whole, how do you support or promote interagency collaboration to have an impact on an issue like housing. And we all understand, we all agree that collaboration is critical. And so having had another, whatever it is, 6 or 9 months of experience on the ground, I'm just curious if you have reflections on what works and what doesn't work, or where are the opportunities or the challenges. And I want to flag that in our conversations back then, we agreed that being an agent or an individual for you on the ground, it wasn't a role or whatever would be obvious for you to play in this scenario, but it is something that we understand is needed to have real sustainable impact. So just your reflections as a development professional looking back.
Yeah, well, thank you, Anthony. I was last summer when we began our fellowship, we have the opportunity to speak with resource staff at the Cody, so people who are very experienced and very knowledgeable in their fields. And I met with Anthony, and he talked to me about this idea of collective impact. And coming from someone with a life sciences background, I had no idea about this global development and like the theory behind community development. And so he gave me a lot of food for thought and things to research. And yeah, that collective impact piece, I think. I don't know the exact definition, but yeah, basically interagency collaboration to produce initiatives and support communities. I think that what I found doesn't work is like one person trying to do everything. And I think that when I initially, basically my project goal was really, okay, I want to do collective impact, but how one person can't just do that. And you have so many people that are agreeing on something. And I think that eventually I was hoping to get towards that. And the COVID-19 pandemic, there were still some project details that I was hoping to work towards more collective impact and interagency collaboration. But I think that you have to having people, everybody, buying into a common goal and a common idea. And I think that also it's essential to have the resources and the support. And I think that when I realized that my niche, in the sense of working with community-based and grassroots groups and getting that support from the local community, I realized that I need to kind of rely on that support and recognize where my support comes from and how to best utilize that support, uncover those assets, and providing a space for those assets to thrive. Whether it's people that are volunteering, people that are coming in, the just the resources, the capital assets that you have, being able to have the space and have the just acknowledging where those come from. So I don't know. I think those are two of the main things that I think I've noticed this year have been the the essential of not working alone, and then also recognizing where the support comes from. But I'm no development genius, so that I know that's from my experience.
Great, thanks a lot. It is a challenge, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I think we understood from the beginning that you, as an individual going in there, that was not your role to play, but it is something that you can observe and see how it plays out between the different agencies, and all the opportunities for synergies and complementarity, but also at the same time some real competition. It may be competition for resources or for clients or whatever, and trying to steer through that field is a real challenge. So anyhow, well done and congratulations on what you have achieved, and yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Now we will hear from Jess for her question for you, Stewart.
Thanks, Nicola. And thank you so much, Stewart, for that lovely presentation. Something that piqued my interest is these plans in motion for this community garden. And I would love to hear more about what is planned for that to play out and who will be involved in implementing this activity, what it means in this project to have sustainable access to fresh food, and what kind of conversations you were a part of that surrounded this, and whether that has been considered as part of the sustainability in your project and moving away from things like food banks and food donations.
That's a really good question, Jess. The community garden. So the woman that we really started this whole drop-in center, mainly the two of us kind of pushing it together. Her name is Ann Ling. She's the coordinator of ministries at St. Mary's, and she's a really just passionate, driven woman. And she found the community garden. Basically, there's this group called the Lakeside Community Garden Association in Kingston, and there was an empty lot that was being vacated by a previous group that wasn't going to use the community garden anymore, and we were able to take it over. And because of her connections with so many parishioners and the volunteer base, she was there were, when we sent a call for volunteers, there was over 20 volunteers that were in it, that wanted to be involved. There's one woman in particular who's taking over the community garden to like plan everything out, and she has a green thumb. I don't have a green thumb. I don't know where I'd start with making a community garden. But what you're getting at is very true. The importance of food sovereignty, sustainable access to fresh foods, and I think we're right now things with the community garden are going well. We're still planting stuff. There was a man with a greenhouse who started to grow some of our, I guess, crops, and so that's that it's already in place. And I don't know when people harvest things. I don't have a green thumb at all, but when like the crops are harvested, we'll be able to offer fruits and vegetables to go. And I think that's food is energy for us, and so having healthy, fresh, nutritious food is really great for all of our guests. It'll be great for food we prepare and for people to take with them. I'm not sure the rest of the question. And yeah, so in terms of the sustainability of it, it's just something that, given we have so many people involved in it, I have no question that it won't be sustainable. But just being able to secure the resources to run the community garden, that was an important part of it. And yeah, it can't completely replace food donations, because in a town such as, in a place such as Canada, we can't rely on our own community gardens to supply food for us throughout the year. And right, we don't have access to meats and that kind of thing that people want. But because we have a public health unit approved kitchen, we can prepare foods, and we've been trying to prepare like healthy and nutritious foods, so soups and good sandwiches, and not just providing like snacks and treats, because yeah, food is part of, I think, empowerment for all of us. So that's an essential part of it.
Thank you so much, Stewart.
Okay, switching back to the Facebook live stream, we have a question from Lisa, who asked, you spoke about your drop-in center clients' well-being and connecting with that. Can you elaborate on what you heard directly from the homeless and in need related to their well-being needs?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of components to well-being. There's health, your mental health, your social abilities. I think it's very individualized, and that's one thing that I kind of appreciated from the beginning of the fellowship, that every person has individual needs. I mean, common issues, addictions, mental health, mental illness, having support for that, and we're not necessarily, I'm not equipped to necessarily deal with those issues. So that's why after COVID-19, we'll be having really great partnership with the Addiction and Health Services Street Health Center to run training with volunteers. And then I think also with well-being, for example, some people want to have some arts programs. I think that's related to well-being, with just enjoyment in life and your mental health, and so we're hopefully having painting and theater, and the other aspects of well-being, just having healthy, good food, having people to talk to. There's quite a few, actually, quite a few people just talk about how lonely they feel, how isolating it is, how a lot of times they can only afford pretty low quality rentals, and they're on their own a lot of the time. Some people have talked about pretty significant mental health problems they're struggling with, and so being able to talk with them, to understand that, to help connect them to resources, and to be a consistent presence, and I think that I think that also through building those trusting relationships, people open up about challenge they have, and I think hopefully as we progress, we'll be more and more capable to deal with a variety of barriers we'll face. But yeah.
Thanks, Stewart. I just want to call on Gord to see if he would like to pose his question from the Zoom chat.
Thanks, Nicola. Thanks, Nicola. Thank you, Stewart. Boy, you're bringing me back to my younger days. And you know, when you began the presentation and really reflected honestly on how challenging it was walking into a community and all the fears that you had and facing up to those fears. It really took me back, and I really appreciated the honesty and sort of openness with which you expressed this. I guess I would just ask if you have any tips for others about, you know, how you overcame that, and, you know, whether it was running a meeting for the first time with people you didn't know, or the stepping on the toes part, or the, you know, anything that was sort of got you out of your comfort zone in which you had to build up the courage to do it. Once you did it, reflecting back on it, is there anything that you can make it easier for anyone else, or do we just have to all go through it?
Yeah, I think one thing that I was talking to the rest of my cohort about is how inevitable it was that I was going to face a lot of these challenges, because just who I am, you know, one of my goals was to work on those issues with social, like you know, running a meeting or public speaking, or you know, just you know, anxieties around that. I just have always had that, and I think it was inevitable to confront it. And so I think that I think what would have made it easier for me doing it would have been to I don't know, to be a bit easier on myself, to recognize what, you know, what was the source of these challenges I was having. I also think that that relying on people was something I learned a lot this year. I think before this year I was a lot more individualist, like just thinking, okay, I need to take on all this stress, and you know, it's hard to trust anybody. And so just learning when I have struggles, just talking to people. I was always relying on Adam this year, who's our program manager with the Ocean Path Fellowship. I think we had a meeting scheduled with him every few months, and I think I met with him like almost every single month or every few weeks, because I was so stressed, and I didn't want to. I wanted to be, you know, achieving well and doing well, but I think that innately those barriers were a lot of myself, and so I think relying on other people, trusting myself, learning what are those things that I keep telling myself that are preventing me from or inhibiting me from really doing what I want to do, and I think just acknowledging that it's okay to be nervous. I think that was something that was very powerful for me this year. Just acknowledging that, you know, yeah, like, you know, I might say something weird, or I might not run a meeting perfectly, or I might stumble when I talk, but ultimately that's okay, especially in the work that I was doing. And I don't know, my girlfriend says that it's endearing sometimes when I'm nervous, so maybe it's a good thing. But yeah.
Okay, great, Stuart. We're going to wrap up the Q&A session with one final question from Greta, who asked, where does your inspiration to work with this demographic come from? Is there something in your personal life from which you draw this inspiration?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, I think as the oldest child of 5 siblings, I've always had a heart to be with people when people are going through difficult things, to listen, and to kind of give myself. One thing that's important for me is my faith, and for me, I believe that, you know, Jesus, with his care for people, his model for humility and self-sacrifice, is something that I always reflect on, and it's what gives me strength. And so I think coming back to my faith and in my community was a constant source of strength, and that's what I I've really learned, and I've learned to trust more in this year. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Stewart, for all of your on-the-spot answering, and your presentation was absolutely fantastic. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. I'm sure you have more questions reeling about his wonderful work in Kingston, but I'm sure you can also contact Stewart at a later time if you would like to ask those questions. So with that, have a great day, everyone.